Happy Friday, Infiniteers! I hope you had a nice Christmas, or a nice holiday if you don't happen to celebrate Christmas. We had a pretty nice day. We got to drive through the snow-covered countryside on our way over to visit with my relatives, and we saw some deer along the way. It was a beautiful drive, and we had a fun visit once we got there. I got a few nice presents. We got to eat some good meals, and it was a good day. But anyway, I am back home now, and I am in my factory toy box, and we are very close to finishing up this toy box. I want to cover one more toy today, and then on Monday we're going to wrap it all up. And after that, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, and then I will be back in mid-January with some more episodes of Toy Box Tutorials to cover some of the other toys from Marvel Battlegrounds and Inside Out and Finding Dory that didn't fit into this toy box. But for today's tutorial, I want to talk about the Wakanda Mining Drone. And, excuse me, this is something you can unlock in the Marvel Battlegrounds playset by completing challenge number 11 as Black Suit Spider-Man. And when you do, you'll find this toy here in the decorations drawer. Let me go ahead and place one. Now, like the mine car and the Ultron core, there's not a lot you can do with this toy, but it does have a logic menu. If I can select it, there we go. And so I wanted to make sure I covered this and give you some ideas of what you can do with this toy. I mean, they went to all the trouble to make this toy available to us, so they must have thought we would want to use it for something. So I've placed one here, and if we open up the logic menu, you'll see we have some trigger signals, and you can also attach this to a path. And if you look under the logic connections at the trigger signals, there's two of them. There's activated and deactivated, and these correspond to two behaviors which you can use to activate the toy and deactivate it. And this works very similar to the mine car, which we looked at a few episodes ago. So let me grab a button over here, just so I don't have to scroll a lot in the editor. And we'll drop a couple of buttons here. And we'll use this one to connect to the mining drone and activate it. We'll use this one to deactivate. And I find it's best for these behaviors to demo them so you can see exactly what they do. So when you activate it, you'll see it turns on some animation. It's got some sparks that fly out the back. It's rocking back and forth, and the little bucket below it containing the ore is kind of moving. And of course, if you deactivate the toy, then it just sits there. And the deactivated behavior is the default behavior. And again, that's very similar to the mine car over here that we looked at in an earlier episode. So very, very similar, where you activate it and it has some animation to it. And you can also attach it to a path. Now you can ride the mine car though, and you might be thinking, well, what do you do with this? Because that doesn't seem like a whole lot to do with that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this episode, is to give you some ideas of what you can do with it. Because like I said, they went to all the trouble to make this available to us, so they must have thought we'd want to use it for something. So let's put it on a path, and we'll just kind of explore our options here. And we'll just kind of create a little path around the area. And I may have to adjust these points a little bit so that they don't run right into those decorations there. Alright, so we'll go ahead and edit the path properties. Set the looped flag and turn off auto start objects when connected. And let's just review the path real quick to make sure it's not going to run into anything like it is over here. So we'll want to move this down a little bit. I always like to try to have a smooth curve. Alright, seems to be clearing that one okay. And that one's kind of tight. There we go. There. I don't think it's going to run into anything or even look like it is. So that's good. And one more thing, let's move this back. Okay, I like that. Alright, so then we can attach this to the path. And we'll want to change the properties to orient it along the path. And the rest of these are all fine. Alright, this button was starting the animation behavior, so we'll use this same button to start it moving along the path. We'll do a reset and play. And since this button was being used to stop the animation and deactivate the drone, we'll use that to reset and stop. Alright, so let's just kind of see what this looks like. So it moves along the path. And I'm going to stand in its way over here to show you something. You'll notice it pushes Mickey. So it doesn't go through him or just bump him off to the side. It actually pushes him. And because of that, you can do some interesting things with this. Let's go ahead and drop another path and I'll show you what I mean. We'll put one out here right along the conveyor belt in front of the droid factory crusher. I don't know how circular this path is going to be, but we'll see what we got here. As long as it's close, it'll get the idea across. So we'll come into properties, once again, turn that on, turn that off. Alright, so if we drop down another mining cart and attach that to the path, what that's going to do is create another obstacle for the player. If you think about it, it's really not too difficult, even though you got that conveyor going, to stand there and wait for the crusher to raise up so you can run under it. But if you have this little guy going around this path, right about where you're planning to stand to wait for this thing to go off, and you're not paying attention, he can come along and either push you off the conveyor or knock you into the crusher. So you can use him as an obstacle. And let's just go ahead and demo that. We'll hook this up to the level starter, because I'm probably going to keep him. So we'll use the level starter to do two things. Start the animation, so we'll activate the Wakanda Mining Drone. And we also want to start it moving along the path. So this is the first thing that you can do with this toy is turn it into an obstacle of sorts. Do a reset and play. So if you put the player on a narrow path, like on the conveyor, or maybe even something narrower, like a block-wide ledge or something, a 1 block wide ledge like this, and you have this thing moving around on that, it can threaten to push the player off of it. Oh. I want to make sure we orient along the path here. That looks better. Alright, so we're trying to avoid this thing and wait for our opportunity to run under it. And along comes this guy who might either push you this way or bump you into this thing. Whoa! So that can be distracting, which is not something you want to have to deal with that, but it adds a level of difficulty to those crushers by having that move around on the path. And again, you can set up other kinds of paths where you could have those things moving back and forth across here, or trying to push you further down the path behind you, or something like that. Another thing, by the way, that you could do with this, you can use the same technique to create a game for it using either this toy or the mine car over there, or the Ultron core that we looked at last time. And you create a narrow path, again with the conveyors, or with a series of blocks, and you put this object behind the player, and the player has to run ahead of this object to stay ahead of it and avoid it. So that could be kind of a fun thing you could do with those toys as well, as another idea. And if you want to make that toy a little bit more deadly or more interesting, there's something else you can do with it. So we have this guy, for example, running around the path here. Let's go ahead and stop that. And let's go grab a dynamic trigger. And I'm going to need a locator too, so let's put that out here. It might be quicker to go left. Now ideally, what I would love to be able to do is use that Wakanda Mining Drone, or the Ultron core, or something like that as an actor. So that you could come in here on the dynamic trigger, do a new actor connection, and connect to this thing. Unfortunately, you'll see it's not letting me select it, so you cannot use that as an actor. And the same is true for the Ultron core and the mine car and some other things. So let me cancel out of that. But what you can do is you can use a locator. Because we know we can attach the dynamic trigger to a locator. And we can attach the locator to the path. And we can set up the dynamic trigger here in the properties so that the target is the locator and the trigger distance is 4. So you have to be kind of close to that locator. And if we go ahead and do a reset and stop on that path, what you will notice is, come back into the editor, the mining drone is sitting right on top of that locator. And so when I press the button to start these moving around the path, they're going to move together. And you can see that here. The two of them are moving and they're staying together. So even though I cannot attach the dynamic trigger directly to the Wakanda drone, I can attach it to a locator, and I have the locator moving with the drone. So it's like having this attached to the drone. Alright, so we could set this up, for example, with a new logic connection when entered by player any. So when they enter that 4-unit radius around the locator, around the drone, we could have it come over, for example, to the action enforcer and have it shock the triggering player. Okay? So now that little toy isn't just going to push you when it bumps into you. If it gets too close to you, it may also shock you. Like that. And I kind of like that because you got those little sparks going off the back of that. So that kind of makes sense. But you can use that same technique then to attach not only a dynamic trigger, but a radar marker or any other number of toys you want. And of course, since you can attach the dynamic trigger to it, you can attach the dynamic trigger to just about anything. So I could, for example, connect this to a kill switch so that if this gets too close to the player, it kills them. And so if I have a path going along my conveyor belt or a linear obstacle course of some kind, and I have my Ultron core attached to the path with a locator moving with it, connected to the dynamic trigger, then I could have it set up with this connected to a kill switch, so that if the player is not able to stay far enough ahead of the thing as they're moving along that linear path and it gets too close to them, it'll catch them and kill them. So that could create some interesting games in your toy box, where it's kind of a pursuit game and you're trying to stay ahead of the pursuer. And you could use, again, the Ultron core for that. You could use the Wakanda drone, the King Candy Cybug, or just about anything you can think of. You can use this same technique to do that. So that's the Wakanda Mining Drone, and some examples of how you might use it in your toy boxes. Thank you for watching. Before you go, leave a comment and let me know what you think of the Wakanda Mining Drone and my tutorial for it. And if you found this tutorial helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more tutorials like this. Be sure to tune in on Monday as we wrap up this toy box and put the finishing touches on it. Until then, have a great weekend.